Hi and welcome. Today we're going to be doing the second tutorial for Regiments, looking at some tips for operations. The first tip is not to overbuy deployment points. This is your main operations screen here, and you can see the highlighted box that shows you this is the total deployment points cost of your entire force. You don't want to buy too many deployment points because if you get close to that total deployment point maximum, you're going to have wasted points, and your operational authority is really critical to upgrading your task forces, calling in more support. You don't want to waste it having points laying around. Keep a few hundred points in reserve so that you can rotate your units out, make sure you can bring them in quickly, and of course you want as many units on the field as possible, but you want to be without waste. And if you look at this screen here, you can see we have 725 deployment points versus 1,325 total force deployment cost. So that gives us about 500 points of leeway of extra units to call in while our units are refitting, repairing, and of course you have some units that might not be a fit to your tactical situation. Try to keep a gap like that and make the best use of your operational authority. The second tip is to keep your units alive. This is really important in operations as everything carries over between battles. There's no shame in popping smoke and pulling your units back, especially when you're at a disadvantage, when you're outnumbered or in a bad spot. Between battles, you don't want to spend your operational authority on just replacing losses. You don't always need to bring your units back up to full strength, but you can see with each platoon, there's a limited number of vehicles available, and you always want to have extra so that even if you take losses during a battle, you can still send that platoon out at full strength the next time. And also, replacing your units is expensive. You can see here how many points it would take to really bring these platoons back up to full strength. And with a limited amount of operational authority, you want to spend that on making your units stronger, not just replacing losses. The second reason is because experience matters. As your units survive and fight more battles, they gain experience, and with that they get an increased rate of fire, increased accuracy, suppression resistance, infantry survivability, and cover effectiveness. And all those will help you really make the most of the units you have, not just getting more units, but making the ones you already have more effective. And if you practice keeping those units alive, especially over longer operations with multiple stages, you'll end up with a really experienced core force who's not just more effective and deadly, but also more able to survive the coming battles and help you keep building up a better and stronger core. The third tip is to add task forces quickly. This is my favorite way to spend operational authority, not just because you get to play with new units, but because it really expands the core of what your units can do. Not all forces you get are balanced. Looking at this one, you have 2 older tank units and then a bunch of infantry. So when you look at what task forces to add, you're going to want to make up for your deficiencies. Go for tanks. There's a lot of options here. And look not just at the force itself. So here we have Corrector, which has 2 T7 or a T72 and a T55. Look at the upgrades. Look at how much the upgrades cost. For only 50 additional points, you can upgrade that task force and upgrade it to T72s. It's also worth thinking about what your enemy has. If you're going to be facing a lot of heavy armor, you'd want to take the T80BV task force instead. Even though it's more expensive, think about what you need to counter. You only have some lighter, older tanks in this task force, and you'd want to have T80s to be able to counter them. The fourth tip is to prioritize capturing OA, operational authority, just as much as you would prioritize capturing victory points. When you look at your regiment after a battle, you've got a lot of things you can spend your operational authority on, and having a huge reserve like the 383 we see here is going to be a big help. You can spend that on upgrading your units, getting new task forces, replenishing your units, or getting support. So when you're looking at the map before the battle, look at where you can capture operational authority. On this map, you can go east and capture victory points, or you can stick with the center and go west and capture operational authority. It might not always be worth it to go for a quick exit and victory, taking just the victory points. It might be worth it here to capture those extra operational authority points, even if it takes a little extra time, so that you can use those to improve your force in between battles. And my fifth and final tip is not to waste points on engineering support. In my experience, it hasn't been very useful, and I don't spend points on these, and I definitely don't buy it twice. For engineering support, you can get an anti-tank support for 20 points, infantry strong point for 10 or 5, I believe. There's also mortar and anti-air points, but they don't appear to be any stronger than your usual units, and you can't move them, and you're limited with where you can deploy them, so that limits how useful they really are. And when you look at those 50 operational authority to spend on them, that can be better used elsewhere, upgrading task forces, reinforcing your units, or getting tactical support rather than engineering support. Thanks again for watching, I really appreciate it. If you like the video, like and subscribe. Let me know if you have any other questions or if there's anything in this video you disagree with. I'd love to learn more about this game and hope I can bring more about it to you. And I hope you're enjoying this game as much as I am.